Ils sont morts. Ils ne feront plus de mal.
The new wave of French Extremity is one of my favourite little pockets of cinema. Back in the 2000s, France just got hardcore.
Throughout the 2000s, especially in the middle, French cinema just had a slew of new horror titles that really pushed the envelope. They contained primal violence, explored deep dark themes, and really pulled on humanity's fear of what can happen to their own flesh with gruesome body horror. Torture porn is commonly associated with the genre, but to be honest, it separates itself from American torture films by having more of a point to the torture itself, or at least focusing on the impact to the individual rather than on the audience watching. Martyrs follows a woman who was kidnapped and ruthlessly tortured as a child. She befriends a fellow orphan growing up, and now that she's become an adult, she believes she's finally tracked down those who committed the atrocities to her all those years ago, and is ready to take her revenge.
And I'm not going to dare spoil anything further, because I think to do so would be to disrespect the film. It's definitely something you're going to get a lot out of going in blind.
The performances are fantastic, everyone just goes for it full throttle. Especially Mylene Jampanoy as Lucy. She's just an uneasy presence, always ready to flip at any moment. She's terrifying, and she's one of the protagonists. The film is constantly flooding you with surprise after surprise. It's pure cinematic anxiety as you're constantly kept on your toes, not knowing what twisted thing the narrative is going to throw at you next. There's so much to process that when I paused the movie, I was shocked 45 minutes had rushed past, since it felt like only 20. You know films like Parasite, where the more and more of the plot unravels, the film's tone and narrative shifts wildly? Martyrs is a lot like that. It feels like 3 very distinct mini-films in each act, with massive twists that completely change the entire movie's goals and subject matter.
The first act is a visceral revenge tale with a little bit of psychological trauma sprinkled in. Then the middle part is more of a body horror movie with some ingredients from Hostel. Then in the final stretch, it's a grueling segment of just pure torture porn.
The film's editing is damn near flawless. It's so tight and intense that you feel every last action like a brick to the teeth. When people fight or die in this movie, it's barbaric and animalistic. Nothing's held back, and bodies are shredded or flop around so realistically. It's one of those films where every time someone receives an injury, your buttocks clench. It just looks that painful. And it's really emphasised with the unbelievable makeup. This is elite level special effects work. It's stunningly graphic.
Yeah, the film isn't for the squeamish. It's a French Extremity movie. It pushes the boundaries of what you can show on screen, but without ever coming across as exploitative or over the top.
While the last third is straight up torture porn, what sets it apart is it's torture porn for a reason. It's not just there for shocks and to make you cringe, though it gets those reactions. It ties directly into the themes the film is exploring. It raises some pretty thought-provoking questions that will linger with you. It's a merciless and ugly film, but it leaves a weirdly beautiful impression on your psyche. The 2 main criticisms I hear with the film is it's too violent and it's too pretentious. Well, the violence claim can go straight in the trash in my opinion, because the film just couldn't be done without violence. And it doesn't clash with the tone of the film at all. But I never got how this film is pretentious. It's never trying to say anything more than it does, and it doesn't try to be overly preachy about it. It doesn't present like it's got a message to deliver that's out of its league. It's just a really well-crafted horror movie that happens to poke itself into various themes.
My only issue is that after a whip-fast first 2/3, the final act really does drag. But at the same time, I'm not sure how you would change it, because the whole point is to fully encapsulate the progress that a character goes through.
I can't think of any changes to make to the movie without weakening it. The ending, for instance, is brilliant. I watched this film when it first came out, and even years later, I would still take a moment to ponder it. I still love hearing people's thoughts on this film, even today, because it divides so many people's opinion.
Martyrs is a cold, cruel exercise in violence that might be too nasty for some, but if you have the stomach for it, you'll find an excellent examination of life, death, and pain. I highly recommend it to anyone willing to travel into the darker side of cinema.